Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video, we will see how to create the build pipeline with Azure Pipeline. So let me just quickly log on to the Devops portal and get the sample application to proceed with the Azure Pipeline demo. Here I am. They say we have to get the sample application. Get ready to start building a CI pipeline with Azure Pipeline. Continuous integration is building up the code, testing the code, and then deploying the code. The first step is to build and run the Space Game web app on your local machine. So we'll download the sample application, run it locally, and then we're going to make the changes and configure it via GitHub. So prepare a Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open up the Visual Studio Code and make sure that the terminal is on integrated terminal is selected as bash. So let me just pull up the Visual Studio Code and then proceed further. It is my Visual Studio Code, and in the terminal section I have selected it as bash. So next we should have Git installed on our computer. So if you will see, I have Git already installed. So if I would check the version, this is it. I am logged on to GitHub, and this is the MS Learn Tailspin Space Game web project. I'm gonna clone it. I'm gonna copy this path. I'm gonna made a directory Azure Devops Lab, and I'm gonna go to my command prompt. I'm gonna use git clone command. Git clone. It will clone this project in the directory that I have mentioned. It is done. Here it is. So this is the same thing that I opened up in the command prompt. I've already, now we'll run the git remote command to list our remotes. I'm sorry for the wrong syntax and spellings. Okay. This is the git repository. So if you would see git remote /v, these are my two. We have both the fetch and the push. It means fetch is for download and push is for upload access to the repository. And then the origin specifies the repo on GitHub. When we fork code from another repo, it's common to name the original remote as upstream because we forked it from the MSLearn, the Microsoft Docs repo. So this is the remote repository for us. Now we'll run the git remote add command to create a remote named upstream that points to the Microsoft repository. So I'm adding git remote add upstream Microsoft Learn this as my report. Okay, now if you'll do the git remote v again, we have fetch and push on these two of them. Now first is the origin from where we have forked it, and the second one is the remote repo that we have added, and we have both fetch and push access to the repository. Now we'll open the project in the file explorer. So in Visual Studio Code, if I go to the terminal window, it points to the root directory of Space Game web project. So if you will see the Visual Studio Code here, it points to. So now I click on File, I will click on Open Folder, and I will go to the folder on which I have. You see here I have this on the root directory, and I have this listed here in the master branch. Now we'll build and run the web application. Now that we have the web application and we have forked it using git clone, we can make the changes on the local, then we can push the changes to the Azure pipeline. Now we'll run the .NET build command to build the application. We can We are building it and running it locally. So we'll run the .NET build command. Here, restore completed, running very good. The build is succeeded, if you will see here. Right, restore completed in the seconds. So this .NET Core projects typically come with two build configurations, debug and release. Debug builds are not optimized for performance. They make it easier for you to trace through your program and troubleshoot issues. Here we have chosen the release configuration, the .NET build configuration release. So we have run the command .NET build configuration release just to see the web app in action. You will likely see a few build warnings in the output. Here are the warnings. 0 errors, 2 warnings. If you would see here, these warnings are included intentionally. We can ignore them for now. So as and when we proceed, make a progress with this project, you will see why we were getting these warnings. So from the terminal window, we'll run the .NET run command to run the application. First, we ran the .NET build command using the configuration version release. Now we'll use the .NET run command. So if you would see here, we'll do .NET run configuration release, no build. The name of the project, which is tailspin dot space game dot web. Here it is. Let's see how it goes. So if you would see, it says .NET run hosting environment production content root path is the location where I have cloned this project, this one, and this is the name of the web game that we have run this project. The solution file can contain more than one project. The project argument that we have specified here, this specifies the project for the space game web application. This is the name of the project. So it says your application is listening on by default port 5000. So if you would see, if you will click this window, but this is running locally, right? You can click on download game. This is the default version, Galaxy, right? Now we have built it and run it. We have interacted the web page as well. So now let's say we have deployed the application, we have run it locally. Now next task would be to plan the build task. I'll proceed further on this. Okay, now that we have a copy of the space game code on the local machine, now we'll go to build it by using the Azure pipeline instead of the, let's say you have an existing build server. It is Ubuntu 16.04. But before we can do that, we need to think about the existing build scripts. We'll follow along as we map the existing script to Azure pipeline. Let's say you have an existing build server running on premises, which is Ubuntu 16.04, and you have built task, build scripts defined on that. You have to make an existing replica of that using the Azure pipeline. Think about how you can do the same with your own build process. So let's say we here as a DevOps engineer, I collected few notes that the build machine on-prem is running Ubuntu 16.04. The build machine includes build tools like we have npm, the package manager for node.js. We have NuGet, the package manager for .NET. We have the .NET Core SDK, and the project uses Sass to make it easier to another CSS files. The project also uses Gulp to minify JavaScript and CSS files. So a minified asset excludes unneeded data like white spaces and shortens variables named to help it download faster. And let's say the steps that happen during the build process is that we run the npm install to install the node.js package. We run the node.sas to convert SAS or the to CSS files. We run gulp to minify JavaScript. We print build info to the www root directory to help the QA team identify the build number and date. We run .NET restores to install the project's dependencies. We run .NET build to build the app under both debug and release configuration, like we did using only the release configuration. Then we run .NET publish to package the application as a zip file and copy the result to a network share for the QA team to pick up. So we'll make a shell script that would perform the task that we have identified, right? And we will realize that after making a shell script that we have outlined, we realize that it's incomplete. For example, it doesn't deal with errors. And in below in the task that we have discussed, nobody is getting a notification if the build has completed with errors, or if there were any errors. It keeps on running. It doesn't stop. If the build fails, we do not get a notification. So we'll define the Azure pipeline task. In Azure pipeline, a task is a packaged script or procedure that's been abstracted with a set of inputs. An Azure pipeline task abstracts away the underlying details. This abstraction makes it easier to run common build functions like downloading build tools or package the application depends or on the running Virtual Studio or Xcode to build the project. Let me show you an example that uses the .NET Core CLI task to build a C# project that targets the .NET Core. And if you would have a look at the script that would completely run, it says that it is installing the node.js modules, compile SAS, minify JavaScript, print the date, install the latest .NET packages, build the app. And an Azure pipeline task abstracts away the underlying details. So here's an example that uses the .NET Core CLI at 2 task to build a C# project that targets the .NET Core. And if you would see, the pipeline might translate this task to this command: .NET build my project.csproj, no restore configuration release. Now let's break this task down a bit more. The .NET Core at 2 task maps to the .NET command, this one to this one. Display name defines the task name that shows in the user interface. You will see that in the action soon when we'll proceed with this lab. Input defines arguments that are passed to the command. So command specifies to run the .NET build. Arguments are need, no restore, configuration release, which is this. And the project name is all the files under .cs project, which is this. And the at in the task name, for example, this refers to the task version. This one. A new task version becomes available. You can gradually migrate to the latest version. So now, how are tasks used in the pipeline? And now, if you want to map the existing task in the Azure pipeline, you can define the task here in the Visual Designer in the Azure Devops. And a YAML file is a compact format that makes it easy to structure the kind of data that's in the configurations files. We typically maintain this YAML file directly with the application source code. Now, if you will map the script commands to the Azure pipeline task, the script npm install would be npm at 1 in the Azure pipeline task. Notes as it would be this. Gulp is gulp at 1. Echo date is the command line at 2. So these are the tasks that we are mapping in the Azure pipeline task, which will run on an on-premise build server. It says there is no built-in task type that runs node, SAS, or prints the date to a file. And more commonly, you'll see the script task, which is a shortcut for command line at 2. Now, after making a clone, after running the app locally, we will set up the Azure Devops environment. And we'll make sure that the we have the Azure DevOps organization to is set up to complete the rest of this section. We did this by running a template that creates a project for us in the Azure DevOps. And if you would run the template, so what I'll do is I'll log on to the Azure DevOps and show you. I am logged on to the Azure DevOps. So in here I'll make a new project for my DevOps. So the project name would be, if you would run the template, it would also create the same thing, but I will do here my new name. I'm gonna click on private, click on create. So you are under this project, Space Game Web Pipeline. So if you would go to here, so you would see this project. If you will click on it, you have the pipelines, you have the dashboards, boards, the repository, and which will have your code, the commits, the branches, and the pipelines. There is no build pipeline. If you would click here, hit overview, right? So if you would go back, we have already make it private on the visibility. This is the if you would want to go for the Azure boards that you see here, wherein you define the task. You'll add a new work item here. So if it's an issue, if it's a bug, if it's a new user story, and then you assign it to different people. Okay. We are in the project, so we'll go to the pipeline here. Create, we'll make a new pipeline. Our code is on GitHub. If it's not connected, you will have to connect it. And if it would be connected, you will have to enter the credentials. If it would not have been connected, you will enter the credentials for your GitHub. I've already connected it, and it's already in there. Now you'll select the mslearn tailspin space game repo because your code is there. So it is configuring the pipeline. It is loading the editor. This is the text file that would be deployed in for building the artifact. It is the you might have to select ASP.NET on the configure tab. On the review tab, note the initial build configuration. So this is the initial build configuration. Build and test ASP.NET Core projects targeting .NET Core. Trigger pool VM image would be this on which our build will be run. Variables are this. And the steps are this. Task is this. Remember, we created the commands for this. And the tasks are defined on the Gulf folder. So this we are creating a build pipeline. Like we have the build server on premises, which have the initial configuration. So this is I am configuring a build pipeline. It is not a release pipeline. I'm making this is a very basic configuration that Azure DevOps provides for on the basis of the application type that is ASP.NET Core. On the review tab, we'll do the save and run. We'll do save. And then we will run. Commit. I'm gonna do a run. It is running. Waiting for the request to be queued. So this is the build screen. Okay, and we'll trace the build process through each of the steps. When the build completes, we will go to the log section. See, these are the initial steps that are running. And after every step, the next step would come. Now it will run the npm install, complete the SaaS assets. The configuration that runs on the on-premises build server is running on the Azure pipelines. And we have run the build pipeline as of now to run the build environment on the Azure DevOps site. It will run. So when all these boxes would be green and completed, like the ones that have been completed so far, so these are the steps that are needed to prepare the VM, fetch the latest source code from GitHub, our YAML file, run the .NET build and clean up. This configuration is a start because now we'll have a starting point for adding the build task. And after configuring it, we also might receive a build notification with the results of the run. We can use these type of notifications to let the team members know when the build would be complete. Now, now that we have the build process completed, you'll see the seconds, the time it took for. So it took 1 minute 6 seconds for this build process to complete. Remember that we are working for the master branch. We will now create a branch named build pipeline to hold the work. The branch gives the place to experiment and get your build working completely without affecting the master branch, because we will not push the changes directly when we are working in the production environment. We can add build task to Azure pipelines.yaml directly from Azure Pipelines. If you would see the Visual Studio code now, this is your YAML file. We'll make the changes in here. But here we will modify the Azure Pipelines YAML locally and push the changes to GitHub. Doing it this way lets the practice your Git skills. We will run the watch the pipeline automatically, build the application while we push up the changes from the local to the GitHub, and then GitHub would trigger the changes to the Azure pipelines. So in here, let's say I'm running the control C. I'll say git pull origin master to fetch the latest changes from the GitHub. It is up to date. I will create a new pipeline here. Let me search for it. I'll run git checkout b build pipeline. This will create a new branch. So if you would see git branch now, you will see that I'm on the build pipeline. And let me search for this file. Azure pipelines.yaml file as we see here. The demand section beneath pool specify that we need npm the node.js package manager. Under the step section, we see the build task that maps to each of the script commands that we defined earlier. Azure pipelines provide built-in build tasks that map to many common build activities. After making the changes in the azure-pipelines.ems file, I'll run these commands. Okay. I've added git add azure pipeline.yaml. I have git committed using the git commit -m command. I have git push origin build pipeline for to here. This is how basically you run the build pipeline. So I hope you liked this video. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, have a great day ahead. Bye bye.